Hello friends, this is going to be a new segment that I make every 2 patch cycles. I'm going to be showcasing both the current Chinese and the global servers archetypes based on single target DPT. This is a representation of meta, and the data is constructed using simulations based on a strict single target enemy profile. All calculations are based at Portrait 0, Insight 3, Level 60, Resonance 10, and Level 60 Psi Cubes at A5. The enemy defense profile is adjusted to have 1000 defense, 25% crit defense, and 20% damage reduction. Damage per turn is further calculated based on the optimal rotation or Bluepock's intended design for that archetype, which in reverse is usually between 4 to 5 turns, depending on the archetype in question. You will find a disparity between my DPT numbers compared to the more prolific results of a researcher like Icehood. This is largely due to the differences in rotation and conditions we conduct the sims. The rotations used are within a expected turn average. There is no inclusion of a random card merge, meaning the numbers will not be as inflated as the 1% RNG-based rotations. The showcase will be referencing the average DPT of 10 rounds, which will obviously disadvantage ramping characters such as Corvus. When it comes to theory crafting versus real gameplay, these sims are only a reference to the archetype's performance, and it varies significantly depending on the conditions of the fight, so view these numbers rationally. It is only for the purposes of creating a hierarchy. I'll add that between patch 3.1 and 3.3, Bluepock has been heavily trending towards favoring single target fights with limited mechanics, as represented by Wailing Well, Maze Bulletin, and Tide of Thoughts. The endgame is essentially single target focused, as these modes come down to fighting a single boss. A video regarding maximum investment should follow sometime in the future if I can get enough whales to help with testing. The napkin math of the expected DPT in that scenario is exclusive to only 3 archetypes who clear the threshold. But ultimately, this video as a whole should be treated as nothing more than a general overview of the top trending archetypes. All of these archetypes have unique win conditions, they're all fun to play, and have their own specific niche and endgame content. I've ordered each archetype based on the Chinese patch 3.3, but will include the current global ranking alongside the Chinese ranking. I'll also include a brief overview in terms of gameplay, or how these archetypes are trending, as well as underscoring the roles of each viable character in the archetype. Finally, I'll include the best Psi Cubes for each character within the patch window. My hope is to ultimately refine the segment in the future so it can be used as a resource. Euphoria Lucy's Dynamo team fully came online with the inclusion of Karen in patch 3.0. This particular gameplay style introduced a static and cyclic rotation, particularly excelling during patch 2.8 and patch 3.1, where the endgame content was entirely focused around reveries up to Wailing Well. The main way we see variance in damage is when additional mobs are introduced, where Lucy can utilize her Reaper mechanic through proccing multiple instances of conservation of energy. Unfortunately, she has been power crept significantly in comparison to the Dynamo main DPSs released in patch 3.1 and 3.2, mainly showing her age due to the change in encounter design moving forward. Karen remains the only core member to the team in order to maintain meaningful damage. In most circumstances, Ulrich is generally preferred, but can be substituted for Flutterpage. The healer position remains quite flexible and should be chosen based on afflatus advantage. However, AP generous healers like Kipperina and Masha that also provide outstanding mitigation are generally preferred. Ezio and Cassandra released during the AC collab, boasting 3 distinct playstyles that heavily centralize around Ezio's core mechanic of counter. The ritual or ultimate focus style leads very marginally if the conditions of the fight are fixed to have a normal counter rate. Significant improvements occur when the counter environment per round increases to 3 or more counters per turn. However, the likelihood of surviving 10 rounds based on the encounter design of endgame in patch 3.3 is very low. As such, his DPT reflects a single counter simulation. Cassandra is the only core member to Ezio's teams, with Getian being the top choice for the Ritual team, Tuesday being the top choice for the Poison team, and Flutterpage being the top choice for the follow-up team, while also flexing comfortably to Cassandra's position on the Poison team. Batutu is the recommended healer for both follow-up and Poison, while Masha is the recommended healer for the Ritual team because Robuska's ultimate does not apply to Ezio's start of the round ultimate. Generic follow-up attack teams were phased out with the new archetypes that were designed from 2.6 onwards. However, Anjanala, who gets a Euphoria update in patch 3.2, is an exception to this, as her kit pairs exceptionally well with Mineral or Starflater's follow-up attack units, in particular Euphoria Calabuana, who also got her Euphoria update in patch 3.2. The gameplay remains unchanged for both characters, with changes only to the speed of the ramp as well as the efficacy of their core mechanics. Anjanala does not have a strict sub-DPS core in her follow-up attack teams. The recommended support is Flutterpage, and the recommended healer is usually Fatutu. Decent improvements have occurred for the rank-up team since the inclusion of Euphoria Argus in patch 3.1. Patch 3.3's Euphoria Mercuria improves this further by replacing Marcus and functioning as a sub-DPS alongside Argus, giving the flexibility to prioritize plant-based damage or funnel into Mercuria depending on Afflatus advantage. Every member is core to the team, with the output being led by Argus. Marcus remains a strong option instead of Mercuria, however the DPT falls considerably. Caution should be extended when investing heavily into this archetype, as it requires Euphoria unlocks for every member and is due for an overall redesign in the form of a specialized main DPS. The latest iteration of the Ritual team, Igor, who functions as the main DPS, can be considered a Recoleta 2.0, utilizing a unique mechanic that directly ties his family members in order to unlock bonuses. The archetype functions best when these conditions are met, otherwise the intended rotation of one ult per round is disrupted and the damage is significantly impacted. The gameplay design is focused around stacking as many shrapnel debuffs on the main target in order to improve Igor's ultimate multiplier. Due to the design of Igor's insight specifically calling out to the use of his daughters, there is little room for flexibility if high DPT is to be maintained. Lopera can be substituted for Getian, whereas Moldia's position is fixed when playing with a P0 Igor due to the Moxie and Moxie overflow she provides to Igor. The support role tends to be flexible, with Masha being the best unit to fulfill the conditions of 3 beast allies, as well as covering the otherwise underwhelming defensive capabilities of this team. Fatutu should be used to push damage, however she is a poor option if she is at Portrait 0. The new single target focused main DPS for the Dynamo team released in patch 3.1. Corvus boasts the highest DPT scaling out of all the archetypes. She reaches her max potential by round 16 to 17, which is applicable to only one environment, which is Main's Bulletin. She will continue to excel in this environment so long as Bluepock continues to make Afflatus advantaged environments for Corvus. She does not function well in either Reveries in the Rain or Tide of Thoughts due to the welding mechanic and her slow ramp at P0. Her core teammate is Karen, and she does not function without him. The support and healer positions remain flexible depending on the environment. It's generally advised that you run Corvus with Flutterpage and a healer like Masha or Kiparina, as Corvus wants to consume the majority of AP and build arc stacks. The premium Impromptu Incantation team has always been an extremely high performer in single target fights. Mercuria remains the best option for single target fights, however she has not changed the output with her Euphoria update. The gameplay involves accumulating points of inspiration, which in turn increases both the volume of attack instances as well as the damage modifier. While all allies contribute to the accumulation of inspiration, the most important unit is Kiparina. While this DPT is based on the premium Impromptu team, substitutions can be made to the support position where Euphoria Regulus and Euphoria Voyager can be utilized depending on the environment. Anan Lee, who received her second Euphoria in patch 3.3, functions solely as a defensive and control option for this team, but lowers the overall DPT when compared to the other Euphoria options. The first archetype to usher a new level of power and design philosophy where a lot of the mechanics are condensed behind passives. It's generally easy to perform well while playing this archetype. The design is based on converting damage taken into damage output. The Bloodtithe archetype functions well in all environments due to insane innate survivability, as well as scaling damage based on the difficulty of the fight. The gameplay revolves around generating Bloodtithe and maintaining a level of damage through Nautica's follow-up, Mouth of the Mother, before funneling into Nautica as she uses her ultimate. Semmelweis is considered core to the team, while Sentinel and Robusca are considered slightly secondary in that regard. However, if DPT and survivability are to be sustained, you would want to have at least either Sentinel or Robusca for the purposes of damage output, survivability, and Bloodtithe generation. Plotter Page is a strong secondary option for Sentinel, however lacks the Bloodtithe generation and survivability. FuA is a strong alternative to Robusca and should be considered when there is a need for cleanse and high single target damage mitigation. In cases where survivability becomes an issue, running FuA in place of Sentinel is also a very strong option, as the archetype becomes unkillable using double healers. Lingering Glow, which was created with the new limited character Beryl, excels at both AoE and single target damage. Initially compared to Ezio in design, Lingering Glow with the purple crystal setup is a strong performer at P0, with significant potential for growth when considering the archetype is still missing a dedicated support. The weakness of Beryl being a glass cannon was solved with the introduction of Masha in patch 3.3. The gameplay is quite simple in design, where generating halo stacks and burn stacks results in higher Lingering Glow values, which Beryl uses to perform her strong follow-up attacks, similar to the follow-up attacks of Nautica. At the time of making this video, all units shown are core to the archetype, with the exception of FuA, who is utilized in patch 3.2 because she serves as both healer, damage amp, and burn and halo applicator. You will want to replace her as soon as possible, as the survivability and consistency of the team is considerably stronger with Masha. Designed for the purposes of supporting Corvus, Brume functions as the second character to double dip from Incantation as well as Ultimate Might during her follow-up attack. Her strong scaling already placed her as the highest performer at P0, but we quickly found that Anjanala's ultimate interaction allows Brume to perform her follow-up attack before entering her ultimate channeling state, essentially allowing for Anjo and Brume to ult every turn through utilizing Brume's unique Moxie engine, as well as the fact that she is a beast unit to bind with. It drastically improves both their DPT. Her gameplay is pretty straightforward, where her actions as well as her allies charging the Dynamo field increases her thermoelectricity, whereby at 60 stacks she performs the strongest version of her follow-up attack. The attack becomes focused on a single target should Brume use her ultimate on the target beforehand. Brume can function alongside a myriad of Dynamo and non-Dynamo units depending on her ability to generate thermoelectricity. Her core teammate can be considered to be Karen, who drastically improves her output and the ability to get into Dynamo level 3. However, if she's able to trick her Moxie engine with Anjanala, Plotter Page can be used as an alternative if you don't own Karen. The healer position is also quite flexible due to the high level of survivability Anjanala brings to the team. It's recommended to choose based on the fight environment. Another video will follow in patch 3.5 to provide further updates. That's it from me. Till next time.